Welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. Very happy to have with us today our first guest as a developer, Kris Skiba with Dexel Developments. Kris, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. Kris is the Vice President of Design and Construction for Dexel, and I think you've been with them for,
I've been with them pretty much my whole career. So
Yeah.
I started right after university there.
So it was DAL Engineering and MBA at SMU?
Yes, yeah, I did. As soon as I finished engineering at DAL, I started with Louis Lown, who's the owner of Dexel, and kind of the rest is history. That was in 2006, and I survived. I'm still there.
That's a long time. So that's, 15 years?
Yeah.
And so you're site super and kind of worked your way up and filled a lot of different roles.
All kinds of different roles. I mean, day one, starting there, I was shoveling gravel. So I've done everything.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So maybe we just talk a little bit about, Dexel. Everybody in the industry knows Dexel. I mean, you guys have been putting up so many landmark projects and the great architectural statements in the city for so many years, and just really making Halifax look better, right? And that's it's great to have you guys on as a developer. But maybe just a little bit about like Dexel architecture, and kind of how things work in the company and how it's set up, and just a little background.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, thank you for the kind words. It's flattering. We have our nose to the grindstone most of the time, and you're kind of looking down at what you're doing every day, and every once in a while you pop your head up and you kind of recognize what you're doing and recognize that other people around you are recognizing it. So it's a good reminder to say, we are doing some cool projects.
Yeah.
Structure of the company is, we have Dexel Architecture, which is our kind of little in-house design firm. There's a team of 5. We focus primarily on the construction drawings, really the nuts and bolts of putting the building together. A lot of the initial kind of concepts, we work with different architectural firms to come up with the concepts, and then we really hone and refine them in-house. And that's kind of one big arm of the company. And the other side is the construction management end. So we do all our own construction management. Yeah. So you see the Dexel signs on the sites. Those are our own guys that are out there, guys and girls who are managing the sites. So we get this whole full circle, and then on the back end we have Paramount Management that manages the properties. So we build exclusively apartment buildings with some mixed use in them. And we're owning them, we're developing them, we're designing them, we're building them, and then we're managing them afterwards. So we get this really cool kind of full life cycle look at the building world, which I'm really fortunate to be part of, because it's a very unique way to look at construction. That you get to see that whole piece. You're not just looking at a little kind of a wedge of a life cycle of a building. You see the whole thing.
Yeah, there's not many to compare it to as integrated as Dexel is with the in-house architecture. And
there's a few other developers that kind of function in a similar way to us. But on the whole, I think it's a relatively unique model. And like I said, there's a few developers here locally in Halifax, but it's somewhat unique to Halifax too, the way that we work.
Yeah.
But it's you get to see, like I said, a different perspective, and you get to learn so much. And I think that's really what has helped us develop as a company and develop the quality product that we're able to produce, because we have to live with every one of our mistakes.
Yeah.
You're fortunate or unfortunate, when you're finished, you're not selling the project and walking away from it. It's yours, and every error, every mistake you're aware of, and you kind of have to deal with and correct. So it gives you this really, a great building block every time you go to the next project. Okay, what went right on the last one? What didn't? What went right 10 years ago? Oh my goodness, we have an entire system design in a building that 10 years later is not doing what it's supposed to, and we can learn from that. And
so what's it look like in-house for your construction division and your architecture division? Is that an open communication all the time? Or is architecture dominantly like preliminary stuff, or are they in contact with while the site's being built with the site super in-house? And
yeah, it's very integrated. So, as the architectural team works through their construction drawings, we're often already building.
Yeah.
There's shovels in the ground, and we're still hammering through, mechanical, electrical system designs and suite layouts. And as we go through construction, there's questions, there's detail clarifications, and that's one of the strengths we have. It's a direct line. They're picking up the phone, email right to the architect, and right to the the decision makers. So, the RFI process or change order internally it's so easy compared to what it would be, if you have a general contractor.
That sounds amazing.
Because you just, you ask the question and, here's the answer, and we try to get back within the same day with a response. And it definitely makes things very smooth, and we get spoiled that way for sure.
Extremely efficient.
We try to be efficient.
Yeah. So every one of Dexel's buildings, is Dexel Architecture involved? I know you said you do outsource some parts of the architecture, which is normal.
Yep.
But they're always involved.
We're always involved. And really that stemmed from early days and working with architectural firms and wanting a higher level of detail than traditionally is produced from an architectural firm. One of Louis' first buildings before I started with him was a Waterford, which is on Hollis Street. And, any person or company cuts their teeth on their first building, and you learn a lot. And I think through that process, and this is the message he's passed on to us as a team, is, really to make sure your envelope's tight, to make sure you have an efficient building, that the detailing is correct. I mean, there's a couple ways to do this. You can rely on craftsmen who really understand how to take a schematic type detail and create that into something that's going to work, and that's a method that works. The craftsmen are fewer and further between as the industry grows here. There's so many young people in it, so many there's just so much construction going on. It's forcing a higher level of detail, a higher level of instruction to the site, so that not only that, the buildings themselves are more complicated. Envelope design is more complicated. Materials in the building more complicated. Heating systems are more complicated. So it, providing really quality information to the site was the catalyst of bringing that design in-house. And it started with just having one design person who's going to take an architectural drawing and maybe augment and detail a few things and respond quickly with some sketches to support the site. And it's grown from that.
To a full team of 5.
Yeah, so it was really a kind of an organic growth. When I started with Dexel, it was 3 of us. Louis being the site super, the project manager, the owner, the developer, a CAD person, and kind of me just going where I was told to go and learning that way. And it's just been one step at a time of just this organic evolution to where we are now.
That was great timing for you to come out of your university career or your university time into the workforce with someone like Louis, and then just be with him the whole journey.
It definitely was. It was I think it was a lot of luck in some ways for both him and I. I had no idea what I was getting into. I just finished an engineering degree, and it was 2006. There was not much going on here. Louis had the only tower crane up in downtown Halifax at the time. What building was that? That was at the W Suites, which is on Barrington Street. Yeah. And most of my friends I graduated with, I think I was in a class of about 45. 40 of them went out west to Calgary or Edmonton because that's where the work was. And I really wanted to stay here. I love the Maritimes. I love Halifax.
You grew up here, right?
I grew up here. Yeah. My family's from here. All my extended family's here. I'm very connected in Halifax and in Nova Scotia. So my goal was to stay here, and I was applying with companies that are here, and I was ready to take a job. I love building things. I've always loved building things. So it was, what's a job? I can build things and work in Halifax. And I, luckily I ended up working with Louis. I remember the interview pretty clearly. And I remember telling him, you know, he said, why do you want to work here? I'm like a 22-year-old kid. I'm green as anything. I've never done anything like this before. And I said, I want to learn the business. I want to learn. I want to learn how to build buildings. And, you know, he gave me a shot at it and worked my butt off, and kind of just slowly, year over year, just grew in responsibilities and took on more. And, you know, the MBA came into play a little later, which was, that was really around the time when I was a site super. I've been a site super on a few projects. And, you know, there's a transition at some point. You can get really good at being on site and managing the build. But to move to that next level, you need to understand the numbers. You need to understand the business side, the people management side a little better. You need to understand how to you make those dollars and cents work and be able to produce something at the end and make good decisions along the way that's going to keep you on the right side of that being profitable.
Yeah, and it kind of shows, you know, your proactiveness and initiative as, you know, you're talking about being a site super during that time, and then that's kind of the time where you did your MBA at St. Mary's. And I've always thought that, you know, the best site supers, even foremen for subcontractors, are often very business minded because, I mean, they're rallying troops, and they have to have the construction knowledge, but they also have to be thinking every minute of every day, like, am I making the company money? Because that's really their job.
Yeah.
To hold that boundary, right? To steward the finances. So,
I mean, I come from construction management. I learned the design as I went. So I would say I'm kind of, my mindset is fundamentally rooted around that, with design, good detailed design supporting quality construction management. But from the construction management end of things, and even the design, what we deal in is information. That's all we do all day is communicate. We take a piece of information from here and we tell someone else over there, and then we follow up with them and make sure they understand what we're doing, and try to motivate them and try to give them kind of a path and a direction and a timeline. That is all, you know, if you boil it down, that's what construction management is, where the managers are not out there on the tools.
Talk more about that communication, because, like, for someone like you in your position with a company like Dexel, building landmark projects year after year at that level, it's all communication. It's just talk about, like, what are the skills, what are, like, when people are striving to get to that level in their careers in construction. Obviously communication is important. It's kind of a cliche, but, like, just maybe talk about your experience with that.
Well, I think
so many parties, right? So many parties to collaborate with.
Fundamentally, the most important thing is to align all the different parties that are involved. At the end of the day, there's a couple hundred people coming together physically on a site, and there's hundreds more that are in the manufacturing facilities, who are, you know, at project managers with the contractors or accountants, or that are kind of supporting that. There's thousands of people that touch these projects, and everyone has their own goals, but there's one common goal that all of those individuals involved in, and that is to complete the project and to be proud of the work they did, and to hopefully put a little bit of money in their pocket when they're finished. So the trick is to align everyone and have everyone understand the fundamental that 95, 98% of everyone that's working there wants to do the best they can every day and wants to be proud of what they're doing. So if you can take that mindset and that attitude and direct it towards a common goal, which is a project, that's really what you're trying to do every day. Understand that point of view of maybe what's specifically important to them, understand how that fits in the bigger picture, and align everyone's goals towards the same. And you do that through daily huddles, you know, at the site level every day. You have foreman meeting talking to each other. This is what I'm working on. Hey, maybe I'm having a problem here. We're going to be working in this area. Can we make sure it's clear, clean, so everyone understands? Because everyone wants to come each day and get the most out of the day. You don't want to be butting heads with each other in each other's way. So you have that on a daily basis. Then you have, a weekly meeting where you're talking about, this is what's going to happen over the next 3 weeks. So how do we plan? Where are we going to stage some vehicles? Are we missing drawings or details? Is there material problems? You're kind of talking about the bigger picture. And then usually about bi-monthly, we have a project manager level meeting where we're talking about some of the goals for the next 2 or 3 months that are coming up. What do we need for resources? What should we be expecting to accomplish so that companies that we're working with can plan and know ahead, hey, maybe I need to budget 4 or 5 workers here on this site that's coming up down the road, and that helps you avoid those conversations where you're calling somebody saying, hey, get down here. We're trying to get this floor finished, and I don't have the guys. They're busy on another job. Yeah. Well, if you talk about it in advance, they can be prepared, and it makes things go a lot smoother. So, I guess that's what I mean by it's communication and understanding what makes everyone tick.
And I mean, anyone who's part of these big projects, they understand how important the logistics and planning is. And, if you're part of one that doesn't go well and things are getting missed and you're getting calls like 2 days before you need to be on site, I mean, that's because those meetings aren't happening as much as they need to and the communication isn't there. So
Oftentimes. I mean, there's always things that are out of your control that you have to deal with. You have to pivot. And it's not always roses. There's a lot of putting out fires. We talk about spinning plates. That's the analogy we use in the office a lot. Yeah. You have a lot of plates. You got them spinning on top of that stick, and you really just you try to get them all going, and one slows down, and you got to go over there and take care of that for a bit. And when you're working with such a large team, they're not your employees. They have
most of them aren't. Yeah,
almost none of them.
Subcontracted.
Almost none of them. We don't self-perform anything. Mm-hmm. We only self-perform the management and the design. Yeah. So the people that we're working with, you don't have a whole lot of control over coming and going and what's happening every day.
It's more like you're the facilitator.
That's how you have to think of yourself. You're facilitating. You're facilitating them to do what they're good at. Yeah. And for them to showcase their skills, and you're just trying to help make that happen.
And like you said before, if everybody's part of the project, everybody makes a percentage and turns a margin and does something they're proud of. And that's the goal, right?
And that's what we're trying to do with some of our projects. It's an incredibly good feeling when the people around you are proud of what you're achieving together. You mentioned a project like the George. It's exciting to see that building coming together, and it's exciting to see the energy just the project itself brings. Yeah. That everyone involved is excited to be part of a project that other people recognize as being, kind of as changing the landscape. And that lot was just a sore point for Halifax for my entire lifetime. I remember going to high school, taking the bus, going by that. At first, it was just some rundown Victorians, like really rundown with pigeons and stuff all over them. Mm-hmm. And then multicolored. One of the previous owners had painted it many different colors. I won't get into what happened there, but and that was a sore point. And then an empty lot for 10 or 15 years. Yeah. So to take that and then turn it into something that's really adding to the neighborhood, that is changing the landscape of Halifax and kind of changing a little bit of the thought of what an apartment building can be. Yeah. It's exciting to be part of it, and it's exciting for everybody on the team. So you don't have to motivate anybody to say, hey, this is gonna,
If you had to, they probably should be there.
They probably should if you had to.
But it's like the simplicity of unity, working together for a common goal, shared vision. It's like there's no better feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the job, like you said, is to facilitate and provide an environment where they can do the best they can. And we don't get it right all the time. We do the best we can every day, and we're learning every day.
Yeah, that's now that you bring up the George, I mean, let's kind of, let's talk about that. And I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and he was just kind of joking around, saying like, that lot's been vacant, like you said, for 15 years. He's like, look, he's like, how does that happen? Like, how's all of a sudden there's this?
Yeah.
And like for people that are outside the industry, and we were talking before we came on the air here, maybe just kind of give a little bit of the timeline of, what it's like to take a vacant lot like that and then get to the point where now you're maybe 5 months away from opening this, major 170 unit, is
Yeah,
it?
we're actually open
17
now.
stories, 14 stories?
It's 15 stories.
15.
Yeah, and we opened at the end of April, actually. So
There you go, I'm out of the loop.
So that's okay, because we've had a construction hoist on the outside until just a couple of weeks ago. So
Right.
we're still building, and we always do. We have a phased opening there.
So at what point, how many years ago does Dexel management, Louis, yourself, look at that lot and then get approval from the city, have your architecture firm design? Take us through a little bit of the process.
It's I will even struggle with the number of years because it's been a very long time. That project has been something that's been floating in our office. I shouldn't say floating. It's been something that's been actively being worked on for 10 plus years. It is a long process to go through things with the city. Things are improving. The city's been doing an excellent job with center plan and streamlining the process. I think we still have a long way to go.
Is that now a big part of your position now, is dealing with the city on approvals and planning and stuff?
Somewhat. Most of my role is I'm certainly involved in some of those early approvals, but it will be taking basically a development agreement or a DA or whatever it is specifically on that site. There's some different approvals and different language depending on the site. But taking it from that point and then taking it into getting the construction permit and then to full occupancy.
And that permit comes from the municipality, correct?
That comes from HRM, from the city.
Yeah.
So you are, those early processes. I do get involved in some of the community engagements and many of those discussions. Yeah. But fortunately, I get to play a supporting role in that area, and Louis generally takes that on, and like I said, then passes it over for me to kind of run with it and execute afterwards. But it is, it's sales. It's a lot of selling. It is sometimes the bylaws work with what you need to do, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes you need to figure out a way to marry kind of those two goals between often bylaws. And again, now I say center plan is helping a lot because it's provided a lot of clarity. But at that time, we're talking about bylaws and zoning that was developed in the 60s and the 70s and is really not relevant for Halifax in the 2000s or 2020s now. Like, it's just, we've come so far as a city. We've developed a lot. Our mindset is different, and what the city needs is different. So it is often and has been a very long process to take what those guidelines say is suitable for a lot and turn that into something that makes sense for today and makes financial sense to build and makes sense for the neighborhood as well. I mean, one thing that we really pride ourselves on is we do our very best to take the best from the neighborhood and complement the neighborhood. St. Joseph's Square is a great example of that. Right. That was St. Joseph's Church, and the site was redeveloped. It's on Gottingen Street. It's apartment buildings. I believe it's a 106-unit apartment building. But we worked very hard to try and bring the feel of the Hydrostone, which is right around the corner, and bring that into the building and take elements of that design in the building. And one of the features we have actually on the corner is it's a stained glass piece. It's a big concrete precast panel that's cantilevered out over the sidewalk, and the stained glass windows in it are the stained glass windows from the original church. The stone that is on the townhouse entrances is all the original stone from the church. And the point of doing this is to really try to integrate the building and the community, pay homage to what was there before, and hopefully leave the community better than when when we were there, and that's always our goal.
There's so much
every
taken
time.
into perspective, like with your architects and your management team, with the neighboring, the community, the history. It's not just about the building.
No, and I think that's part of the magic of building and owning and managing the property, because we're not coming in, spending 2-3 years building and then leaving and going to the next one. We're still there. Those neighbors that got disrupted while we were building are still the neighbors that are living next to the building when it's finished. So, the mindset is not that different than if you're building your own house. You're building in a community that you're planning on living in. So you kind of want to respect the community that's there, because you're going to live there when you're done. You want to be able to say hello to that neighbor afterwards and not have bad blood. You want to be proud when you walk through your neighborhood that what you've created fits in seamlessly and makes it better.
Is there any bylaw issues if there's one or two main ones that you could talk about for the George building? Like, was the height of the building an issue, obstruction of view, energy, how it's heated?
Height of the building and obstruction of views is always an issue.
It's always the biggest one.
Height is a challenge. Heritage is a challenge, always in Halifax. Different projects have different challenges. The attitude is changing around height in Halifax, but traditionally we've been very opposed to height, and there's very few projects I've been involved in where height wasn't a discussion, whether we're talking about a 6-story building, a 9-story building, a 15-story building. It's always a hot button topic.
And it's because of the heritage. It's because, like, a lot of developers are wanting Halifax to be, maybe saying taken seriously as a bigger city like Toronto or whatever, but building up is the thing, right?
Let's face it, Halifax is changing in a very dramatic way in a very short period of time. We see that over the last few years. The last 5 years, you take a photograph from the harbor, 100%. Looking at the city, the skyline is completely different. The feel is completely different, and change is difficult. To be personal with you, my mother and I have this discussion. My mother grew up in Halifax, and it's a very different city than it was then.
How's she feel about it?
She supports me and what I do, but of course, for her it is, it's a different place. You fall in love with the place, and I think it's a community, and the community's changing, and that's a challenge. I think it's always been a challenge for Halifax with so much history in Halifax. How do you respect the history and respect that community and build on it? And that's what we're trying to do. And I give you the example of St. Joseph's Square. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create respectful and quality development that build on that. Does everyone see what we do that way? Probably not. In fact, I know not, but we're putting our best foot forward every day. Height, certainly, we live on a peninsula. There's a limited amount of land. Land is expensive, and sometimes to make it financially viable to do a project, there's a certain level of density that needs to be achieved, and sometimes height needs to be a part of that equation. Again, personally, Halifax is, like I said, when I graduated, there was very little work here if you wanted to work in the construction industry.
Yeah.
And
boy, that's changed.
Has it ever? We can't find enough people to work in the industry.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see that change, to say that, maybe my own son, if he chooses that kind of a path in life, hopefully the opportunities are still here then, but to see that. And even if it's not in that, the amount of opportunities that are here in Halifax, just because of the growth of the city itself, there's thousands of career paths with great jobs right here, and that was not the case before. So for someone, in my age group, the change is just so exciting and so positive, because Halifax is a viable place to live and to be successful and to create a wonderful career. And that was only an option for the lucky few before.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have some other buildings on Spring Garden that you're still waiting for approval that are 29, 30 stories?
We do, yes. Yeah, we have That'll be by far the biggest project we've ever undertaken. It's the full length of a city block.
Yeah.
The project's called Spring Garden West,
Yeah.
and it's gone through some levels of approvals. That was one I did get to bring to council. That was an exciting process for me to be part of, and there's still many hurdles to jump through in terms of the approvals. I believe we first brought that to council 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back to talking about the lifespan of this.
Yeah.
We started working on that probably about 2 or 3 years before that,
Mm-hmm.
with public engagements. I'm thinking, I don't want to say the dates, I might get it wrong, but it might be 2015, 2016 when we really started working on that project. Yeah. And here we are, it's still in our office, it's still a big part of what's going on. Yeah. And we're still quite a few years away from breaking ground.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that, because I think this conversation, and again with the George and 10 years, I just think it would be neat for the audience to, the listeners to hear, as a developing company and your vision and stuff and the patience. Like all people see is, oh, the building's opening, it's a big day, grand opening, top out party, whatever. But, Louis and yourself were thinking about that, like sometimes 15 years before.
Yeah, so
day.
A project like the George, we started breaking ground there. It will be 3 years ago in August when we broke ground. That project was in the works for 10 years prior to that. So the actual construction activity in terms of timeline or duration, although it's the most intense timeline, it's actually just a small snapshot of the entire project.
And that's what I'm getting at. What goes on under the surface that nobody would ever think about. That's what Dexel really does, is you're planning these things years and years before.
You are, They live with us for a long time, and you develop an attachment to these projects. They really do become somewhat like a child, because it's a concept. And, one of the things we often say as well is you have to believe, because the amount of no's that you get, it's always no. From the beginning, you have an idea, and
everybody's telling you no, it's not going to work, and you can't do it.
Absolutely, or we don't want it here, or it's not good for the city, or it's going to take too long, or it's not financially feasible, you just need to figure out how to turn those into yeses, and you have to believe you're going to do it, and that's really the magic of this, and that's the magic the entire way through. You have to be confident, you have to believe you will do it. And through that belief, others will start to believe, and it will happen. But it will take a very long time to happen. It's a lot of tenacity.
Yeah, to me, I'm like I'll geek out on architecture. I love it, and I love the George building. Like it looks amazing. Yeah. You drive up on that, it's awesome, and really a lot of the buildings you guys put up do have that extra architectural.
So I got to give credit to the guys at Fathom who did that concept design.
I've seen that on your website,
for the George. So, we can take credit for a lot, but that.
So they worked in tandem with your team.
We work very closely with any firm. We've worked with them. We've worked with MLSA. We've worked with Michael Napier. We've worked with, I'm going to leave people out by saying this, but we work with a lot of different architectural and design firms. It's always a very collaborative approach. So on the design side, we work exclusively in BIM, in 3D. Mm-hmm. We always have. We started there about 18 years ago. Mm-hmm. Which is exciting because we learned a lot of things and we were kind of an early adopter of it. So
yeah, because it seems everybody's going to that now.
It's the way to go. Yeah. The whole design process is really turning on its head right now, and the whole construction process. Some things are good, some things aren't. I think generally we're going in a positive direction. BIM is a big part of that. It's very powerful in terms of the level that you can model at and the level of coordination you can do. So we're working on design for a project right now called the Press Block, which is just close to where we are right now on Granville and Barrington and George, right in the corner. So there's a heritage building there. We talk about heritage and the challenges, but we're working on the design there, and it's entirely a collaborative approach. We host the model. We do a lot of the architectural design. Fathom partnered with us on that again and did the concept designs. So we take that and we turn it into a BIM model. Then we work with our structural engineers. We're working with Campbell Kamal in this project. They model the structure. We grab their model, we bring it in, and we house that. We're working with Equilibrium, who's doing the mechanical and electrical engineering. They design that in BIM. We grab that, we put in the structure, and we're meeting. We're meeting every 2 weeks, and we're going through, and we're sharing models, and we're looking at we're developing the design together, and we really do build the entire building digitally before we build it physically. And we bring in contractors that we like to work with or we've had great success with in the past, and we bring them in at key times and we ask them for their input. What do you think? Are we on the right path?
Yeah.
Is there, because there's no replacement for that on-the-ground experience where, you talk to an HVAC contractor and they say, well, yeah, you can do it that way, but
here's a better way.
We can do it this way, and this is going to be a lot faster. It's a lot more cost-effective for you. So it's...
Very collaborative.
It's extremely collaborative.
Yeah.
It's flattering that you've invited me here to represent Dexel, but I'm such a small little piece of this whole wheel. There's so many people involved, even early in the design phase, that make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great that you said that because even as experienced as you are, and as big a company as Dexel, that someone like you is just very upfront with. There's so many people involved. We're all such a small part. It's so many, like you said, thousands of people, maybe thousands of people involved even on preliminary stuff before it even
there's
gets
so
built.
Many people involved in preliminary, and you've said a couple times Dexel's a big company. We don't think of ourselves as a big company, and a number of employees at Dexel, we're not really a big company.
Right.
We're a small group, but we're part of a really big team. It's our banner that's on the building.
Yeah.
But
as far as employee size, employee
oh my
base,
goodness, we're the tiniest portion out of everybody that's involved. It's such a team effort to build these buildings, and the level of complexity, it is impossible for any one person to be an expert on all aspects of the building.
Absolutely.
So you have to rely on people who are expert in their field, and
so much delegating, right?
There is, yeah. But the other fun part, though, is we're always challenging each other because we all want to do the best we can all the time. And when you build a group that's the mindset.
Make each other better.
You make each other better. You challenge each other, and you try to produce that product that the George is, that you just get excited about. You get jazzed to work on.
I can feel the passion in your voice.
I am. And you just... I try to surround myself with people who are passionate about it too. Yeah. And then you get excited about getting out of bed. You're ready to work on the project.
And that's what the show really was, the goal of our team and all the people that helped to get this show started, is just to get people together that are passionate about the industry. Because when you talk about it, I get to sit here and listen all day.
Yeah, I mean, we could geek out about construction all day. It's such a fun career and field to work in, because the results are so concrete. Sometimes literally, but...
No pun intended.
No pun intended, but you get to see the fruit of your labor, and it's there long after. And it builds on itself. You do one project, then you do another, and suddenly you kind of look back and you're saying, man, I've done 6 or 7 of these projects, and you see how you learn from each one, and that each one gets a little bit better. And I would think it would be hard to find too many other careers that are as rewarding in that way.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult. It is not an easy career path. I would say anybody who's thinking about construction management or development as a career path, it is not easy, but it is very rewarding.
Yeah. For the George, like when you guys get that approval from the city and you're ready to put a hole in the ground, have the architects just rendered everything together to present to the city? Like, how in depth do they go, or do they wait till, okay, we're green light, now we're gonna get this thing fully designed? Or is it like, what happens first, the chicken or the egg? How does that work?
That's part of believing, I guess, because we really stack things up pretty tight. If you waited for each step to be finished before you started the next step, we wouldn't be here talking about the George. It would still be another 10 years away.
That's the risk, I guess, part of the risk too.
That's the risk. That's part of the fun,
Yeah.
because it is, you're pushing the envelope, and that's part of what makes it hard, because you are taking that risk. And, I'll give you an example with the George. I had the construction permit, and we broke ground about 2 days after we had the permit. And we did that because we lined it up, and we said, we're going to get the permit. That's it. We have to go. We have to start. We're lining up the contract. We're telling the contractor this is the starting date, and we better get this permit. So we're going to work our butts off to make sure we get it. And that was a particularly tight timing.
Fast.
But those are the, that's a moment you celebrate later. Whew, okay, that worked. That was close, but it worked. You usually don't try to time it that close, but you got to stack things up, and you got to work to the dates. And it's the same as you go all the way through the construction process. If you wait till you finish your structure to start your next step, that project, instead of being 3 years ago, again, it would have been 6 or 7 years to do it. You really have to stack, and you have to push yourself along at
constantly looking ahead, just constantly, months and months ahead.
At the position that I'm in and where I'm looking at, you need to
years
look
ahead.
Just even lead times on materials.
We're not going to bring up the
we won't. But anytime,
that's a tough situation.
We bring a lot of things in.
At best of times.
At the best of times, we're bringing in product from all over the world, and when you do that, you're 3, 4, 5 months out.
Like the stone on the George. Where's that? Is that from Europe or something? Am I wrong?
You are. It's from Turkey.
Yeah.
The granite on the kind of bottom courses is from Turkey. Yeah. The countertops are from China. Everything we most products that are here are from all over the world.
All over the world. Anyway,
but the difference is usually you're buying it through someone that's already brought it in its warehouse here stuff. But at the volume that we're buying a lot of things, we're going direct, and we're sourcing it from somewhere, or we're sourcing it from a broker, someone who deals with that here. But the lead times are they're very long. You need to plan well in advance, and it does become a weird mindset. It makes time seem to go by very fast. It's just about summer now, or just kind of getting into that. And my mindset is, we're building Mumford Road right now, which is 22 West. It's the new name.
How's that going?
It's going great. But my mind is like, we're getting ready for winter. That's where my head is at right now. Whatever's happening in summer, the site super's looking after that. The PM's looking after that. I'm thinking about, okay, what's coming up in the wintertime? How are we going to open the building? When are people going to move in? Like, you just, it's a different timeline that you have to think about.
It's like you get one big day where you have a grand opening or something, then the next day it's like you're off to the next 2 or 3 things that you have to look 6 months down the road.
So you just, it's a different time scale than I think probably most people deal with in a day to day.
A little more about the George. Talked about some of the materials and the countertops from China, the stone from Turkey, and just what are some other things about the design? We could talk about real estate and the suites and all that, and that information's obviously on Paramount website and all that stuff, but maybe just about the construction materials, like to you, what's some of the neat design things about the George? It speaks for itself, but I
would say some of the unique and challenging pieces are the basic science of the design. Fundamentally, the George has this idea of volumes kind of skewed on top of each other. And you'll see that when you look at the tower volume. And each of the volume has its own characteristics. So the tower is window wall. It's a system from Better Value Glazing. They're based out of Ontario, and it's a kind of a unitized glazing system.
Do they come down for the install as well?
They do. The installers are local, but they do come down and support them. But their installation team is local.
Job.
It's a big glazing job. But that whole volume is actually skewed and sitting kind of off of the
grid
building
line?
below. Yeah, it's off of the grid line. So on one side of the building, it actually projects out about 7 feet.
So it's
and on the
not
other
a
side
typical
about 4.
curtain wall. It's different than the.
Well, it's not the glazing itself. It's actually the concrete structure actually shifts off grid when you get to the tower. And the challenges of that structural design and how to execute that, and how to create the illusion that there's a box kind of tilted and offset from the
Reminds me a little bit of the library.
It is.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. In our office, we called it the library detail.
Yeah, the library.
Yeah. And it was
the Halifax Library. For
the Halifax Library. So it was actually studied.
Cantilevered out.
How did they do that? How did they take a couple volumes of boxes and twist and turn them and have them cantilevered over each other? Because structure doesn't work that way. No. You're not just taking, containers and stacking them.
Plus, your site super is having a hell of a time because nothing is like in line with that starting point, right? No orientation point.
Well, the library is its own. Yeah, that's its own beast. At least ours was just shifted. It wasn't twisted. Yeah. But the logistics of doing that and designing that was very challenging. I remember working with our lead architect, Nick Lepreski, is working through it. And this was, the library detail. How do we do this? How do we get the parapets and create this look?
I wonder if you touched base with FBM or anyone over there at Elliston about that.
I don't know if he did or not. I didn't. He probably did. So that was one challenge. And then we look at kind of the other pieces of it. And there's the ceramic tile system. That's kind of a white volume, and then we have a masonry that runs down along Pepperell. So the whole
it's all ceramic outside too for cladding.
The white that you see on the building is all ceramic tile,
and then terracotta, or what is that?
It's ceramic. Yeah. Terracotta would be something a little bit different.
A little different, yeah.
It's called Tempio. The product
Tempio,
that's
right.
on there, and it's kind of a hung on an aluminum rail system. Mm-hmm. But whenever you have these multiple different cladding types and these kind of different shifts in volume and shape, it creates a wonderful building like that because it breaks up the mass. It's an extremely large building. It's a 30,000 square foot footprint, but you don't feel it when you're walking around because it interacts with the street like several smaller buildings kind of clustered together.
Yeah, right.
That's the magic of the building. Yeah. It was also the challenge of the building. So you have 3 major cladding types, and then within that there was probably 3 or 4 other kind of minor accent cladding pieces that are on it. Yeah. And these are all executed by different trades. They're different materials from different places, and kind of bringing that all together. Yeah. And anybody who's in the design world knows the devil is in the details and how you marry 2 different systems together. You're doing the same system, you got a handful of details and you're repeating them. But every time you stop one cladding and you move to another cladding, maintaining the integrity of your envelope and the transitions, it's just...
Well, the more transition you have, the harder it is.
The harder it is.
Scopes will even get missed. Like, well, who's doing the caulking there? Who's wrapping that?
It's very difficult catching all of them, and that's a big part of what we try to do is make sure we have all the scopes. And then back to that communication piece, when it gets to the site, working with the different installers, I'm not on site every day. I do spend a lot of time on site, and I'll tell you, I develop a lot of relationships, personal relationship, friends. They're professional, but they're people that you bond with.
Well, you work with them for a year or more. A lot of times.
Many times, some of these we work with them 3-4 years on a project, maybe, and multiple projects with many of the same people. It's a very small community that builds in Halifax and builds multi-unit. So sometimes you hire a different company. And hey. You moved over there, great. You know that person, but you develop these relationships even working through them because you do the best you can on the design side. Sometimes these things hit site, and then you get 2 people together that are working on the 2 systems, and they're looking at you saying, "Yeah, that looks good on paper," but that they're sequencing it. Well, I got to do this little part first, and then I'll do this, and like you're kind of all working together.
Yeah, 100%. What about for the energy side of the George?
Yeah,
you have a partnership with Efficiency NS?
Yeah, so Efficiency...
Just for that building, or is that... you work closely with them on all your buildings?
We do, and they work closely with most developers.
Right.
Efficiency Nova Scotia has been really great in supporting the development community in producing some energy-efficient buildings. And helping support that financially. So we work through many of the things that we're trying to do, and They
Natural
help us.
gas? Is it?
So that building, it does have natural gas in it. The corridors are heated using natural gas. Efficiency Nova Scotia, though, is primarily looking at electrical consumption and savings. It's not so much about fuel switching, but it's about creating a more efficient electrical building. It's primarily focused around that. That building is VRF, which is variable refrigerant flow is what it stands for. It's a very efficient electrical system. You would liken it to a heat pump in a house where you have a compressor outside and you have your little, your wall unit blowing. This is very similar concept.
Air conditioning and heat in the same system?
Exactly. Yeah. So you have one compressor outside that may service 3 or 4 different apartments. Instead of it being on the wall, it's ducted in the ceiling. That's the second job we did in VRF. We're doing a few of them now, and that's kind of the trend in Halifax. It is one of the most efficient systems you can have, and of course Efficiency Nova Scotia supports it, which helps to go that direction. Now for us, it's always been a mandate to build as efficiently as possible because we're owning and operating the building. So the cost, when we look at the cost of construction, we're really looking at it, what's a 25-year horizon? Does it make sense to invest more capital now, and it's going to be more cost effective over the lifetime of the system? That's the way we look at making these decisions.
What's the exterior envelope at the George? Is it a spray foam with an air barrier? What's the assembly?
Yeah, so it depends on the wall system because there's so many of them.
In different locations.
Until everything below the tower is a steel stud wall on the outside. We do a spray foam. Then we do an R8 bat, so a fiberglass bat inside of that. And then on the outside of the stud, we're actually using an 1.5-inch rigid insulation. And then depending on the system, there'd be a 5/8 drywall over that. Yep. And then
like dense glass.
And then we would have our air permeable vapor barrier on the outside. And the rigid insulation was a design that I wouldn't say it's unique to us, but it's definitely not necessarily market standard. It's something that we kind of took and ran with over the years, and it's really to reduce thermal bridging, which is a really big issue, and the new energy code is addressing that now. That's largely been ignored, which is any kind of steel component that's passing through your insulation just erodes most of the value of the insulation.
So all the cladding and masonry guys using thermal clips there, or is it just a regular clip with mastic
caulking? They're using a regular clip with a mastic caulking, but the clip is mounted on top of a high density foam. So the foam is acting as a thermal bridge.
Right. That's
so
thermal bridge.
Yeah, if you want a thermally broken clip, which is actually some of the systems we're looking at now, we're actually moving towards a more traditional wall system with a thermally broken clip. So that's kind of the other way that you can approach
Geeking out now in buildings.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, but and things are changing a lot around this. This is an area that the code has changed, and I think you're going to see a lot of changes in buildings. There's a lot of things that builders have been doing, ourselves included, that just simply aren't. The standards are very high, and we really have to think outside of the box on how to achieve them. Yeah, it's not something that we're doing because it makes sense financially for us. It's something that we're doing because it makes sense financially, and because
it's high quality.
Well, because you have to, because your building won't be approved if it's not there. So it's going to raise the bar for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're going to own the building after anyway, so it's like, why not build it right?
Well, it's true.
Save your added costs 5-10 years down the road.
Well, I mean, as we're talking about efficiency, actually, one of the things that we're doing now, which I think is we'll see how it's received by the market, and the George has this, and our project before at Flynn Flats has this as well, is we're doing suite by suite utility metering. So traditional model for an apartment building, you would have the heating and cooling would often be carried by the landlord. You would have an all-in. You're going to pay your own electrical bill, but your other heating and cooling and hot water would be by the landlord. Yeah. And what the science is supporting is user pay is the best way to create a more efficient building. Right. And it just kind of makes sense when you think about it. If I can save a few bucks and close my window when my AC is on, I'm going to be more apt to do that. Whereas when the landlord is paying for the AC, it just, not to say that you're going to be wasteful because you're not paying for it, but it doesn't affect you. Maybe you don't think about it. But when you get that bill and you say, whoa, that was a big heating bill this summer, or cooling in the summer, it registers. Okay, maybe I'm going to maybe turn the thermostat up a bit and close that window, or vice versa in the winter. So we're really moving to that direction, and that's the model that we're moving forward, is doing these kind of user pay utilities. And we're seeing the benefits of that with Flynn Flats. It's only a smaller building, it's 43 units, and really excited to see the data, because we're always looking back at the data too, and how does that building compare in performance in the previous one. So we're really interested to see, a larger scale.
Is that hard data to gather, to achieve, like sufficient data for metrics?
Well, when it's the landlord paying, it's not too bad, but you just get a lump sum. Like, this is what this is your gas bill, this is your water bill, and even this way, it's not too bad, because we're partnering right now with Wise Metering, they bring in the meters, and they're installed their Wi-Fi meters. They connect in the suites, and we put them in line in the water supply, and it's we measure electrical current and all the equipment. So you get kind of a spit out spreadsheet of saying this is what your building is doing, and we also do it on the so that's the tenant side, but we do that on the house power and the house utilities as well. So we invest in building controls that we track and trend, and we get some really great data, and it's great afterwards. We'll revisit it in 2 years down the road, or a year down the road, and you never get it right the first time. You think you have it great, and then you go through a winter and you realize, that's not really doing what it's supposed to do. Why is that acting that way? And then you go and tune it up and adjust your set points. So the data is available. It's available because of the way we design, but it's not too hard to get your hands on it if you sort of understand.
It'd be easier for you guys to gather that data with your integrated model.
With our model, yes, it's very easy to get the data, and it's great. I said we're designing press block, and what do we do? Well, let's go see what the data at Flynn Flats said. What does we're thinking of this heating system or that? Well, we have that heating system in a building. What's that look like? How does that actually perform?
Yeah. What's the lighting at the George? Is it all LED lights?
It's all LED lights.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's LED. Integrated LED in the suites, common areas is, it's incandescent fixtures with LED bulbs. Yeah. But we've pretty much moved LED. Parking garages are now occupancy sensors there in the parking. How many levels in the parkade? It's 3 levels underground.
Yeah. So what about Mumford? Is that more than 3?
No, Mumford is it's only one.
Oh, just
level,
one. Bigger footprint there too.
Bigger footprint. Sorry, 2 levels below grade. Okay. But no, Mumford's actually it's actually the same size footprint. Yeah. It's a little bit smaller. Yeah. It's a tall building. It's it's 22 stories as opposed to this at 15, but it's actually a smaller building, which just shows how just big the George is. Yeah. Yeah.
When you guys do parkades, do you typically paint the parkade and do epoxy on the floors? Or I'm just curious, like sometimes you have to, sometimes you don't, depending on the building code. It's just your preference.
It's your preference. We do what's called a bridge deck solution on our parking garages. So we actually will apply a membrane, a hot rubberized asphalt, or a torch on, and then we'll pour 4 inches of concrete over top of that, and that protects our structural slabs. So that protects all the rebar that's in the concrete from the salt that's coming off the cars. Yeah. But it's funny you say about painting it. I mean, we paint. This is front-loading work on the job site or stacking things. As soon as that parquet is poured and stripped, we're in there spray painting the whole thing. So the whole thing is painted white right from day one. We put the membrane down. We'll put the finished lights up. Yeah. They're still building the building up
the
above.
Lines.
We'll paint the lines and everything. And that way, when everybody comes in and works in the building,
it's a finished parquet.
It's a parquet. Yeah. And then everybody treats it like a parquet. Yeah. We all know what it's like to drive into one and what the rules and what the social norms are in a parquet. Yeah. We didn't used to do that. We used to leave them. We'd finish them towards the end. It's more stress on the site team when you're trying to do everything at the end. So that was one reason to do it. Yeah. But
it's just because you pull into some parkades and massive buildings are in the city, some of the biggest. some are painted, some aren't. Some have the seals, some don't.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the difference?
I mean, the seal's cheaper for sure. It doesn't last as long. There's a lot of maintenance with those when you do those coatings on the floors.
Yeah.
You have to touch them up every year. Studded tires are ruining
expensive
them.
finishing too.
Yeah. So the concrete, the bridge deck solution we do is a little bit more money, but it's one and done. It's bulletproof.
Yeah.
We have buildings we've done this that are 20 years old now, and we haven't had to touch them.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to make the parquet as bright as possible because.
Yeah, you were talking about the lighting there.
It's just nice to have a bright parking garage.
It is.
I don't know.
Right.
It feels good.
A lot of them are dark.
A lot of them aren't, but there's something. I can't describe what it is, but a bright parking garage, it feels safe, it feels clean, and it kind of elevates the whole building. It's one of those little things.
Yeah, it's one of those things maybe you don't notice that you, when you're maybe not. I mean, you wouldn't notice it every day, but if you didn't have it after a while, it'd be like something's not right.
There's an impression when you go in any building around town, a public or private building. When you drive in, the parking garage is clean and bright and well lit. It sets a tone for the rest of the building.
Yeah.
I mean, when you drive in a building that's kind of got a dingy parkade, your expectations aren't that high for what's to follow behind the other
it's like
door.
a psychological factor.
It is. Yeah. It is. I mean, Queen's Mark's a great example of that. Their parkade is incredibly professional. I know the first time I went in that building, that was my experience. I drive through the parkade. First thing I come in, immediately I'm like, okay, this is
good start.
Great start.
Yeah.
They invested some money and some time and care here. The rest of the building must be really nice.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. That's the other aspect, I think, of this.
Well,
this business, it messes with your mind because you cannot go anywhere.
Your wife probably noticing you staring up at the ceiling.
Yeah, you get distracted by stuff. Yeah, you absolutely. You notice everything that people do that's exciting and interesting, and you notice, you start to notice flaws. You start to look around. And it's funny because, as we have people coming up in the business that are growing into these roles, that's one of the things that they often comment on. It's like, I can't even go to a friend's house and not be looking around. It's hard for me to not comment on something.
Ingrained in your thinking.
It is. And you got to check yourself because 90% of the people you're around, if you're not at work, A, they don't care.
They don't care.
And
they don't
B,
notice.
they don't want to hear about it. They do not want you to go around and pick out this little detail or that's not right. That's not a great way to make friends. So.
No, it's not. Yeah, I hear you there. I've been the culprit on the other end of that many times. So, listen, I think we could talk for days. This is extremely enjoyable. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on as far as for Dexel, for anything we didn't cover about the George, and maybe just give a shout out to your social media presence if you like, or just to finish up?
Sure. Well, I guess if I were to kind of finish up with a message, this is a great industry to work in, and it's in need of people. There's so much demand right now, and many of us, I think the entire industry has been working really hard to professionalize ourselves. I think the image that the public has of the construction industry is not really correct. It's not representative. A lot of people have an image of construction as not, someone holding a road sign or driving a truck or running an excavator or pouring concrete. And these are all great trades, but that's all they see.
It's very stereotypical.
It's very stereotypical, and it's very, okay, if I'm going to be in construction, I'm going to do this kind of thing. There's construction management, there's construction admin, there's accounting, there's architecture, it is endless the careers you can have in construction. All of these paths give you that same sense of satisfaction. I can tell you in our office, everyone from reception to the owners just gets jazzed about these projects and gets excited about them and is proud to be part of them.
Yeah.
So
you're helping build the city.
You are, and your family sees it, and your friends see it, and then Dan calls you and asks you to be on a podcast. It's just you're recognized because you're part of it at whatever level you're at. And I'd love for that to be a career path that's in mind for people who are younger. I don't see it being promoted as much as I wish it was. I know the NSCC does such an awesome job with their programs that they put together. there's great jobs, great paying jobs, really rewarding jobs, and you can stay right here at home.
Yeah.
I mean, what's not to love about that?
That's a great message from you for our youth, that are thinking about.
So, I guess we can, if there's a closing message, that would be it. And the opportunities they're really endless. The sky's the limit. Look, I told you I started shoveling gravel. Yes, I went and did an engineering degree, but if you really want to be successful in this business, you need to learn all parts of it, and you need to have the humility to do
to shovel gravel,
to do anything
for a while.
Yeah, and that, like I said,
humility to be a fool to one day be a master, right?
Exactly.
The saying goes.
And Louis, when I started, he's a crafty guy.
I think he must be.
Go down there and shovel. And why was it? It wasn't to shovel gravel.
No.
It was to learn how to grade and understand how the grading drawings work.
Yeah. And some kids might have done that for a week and been like, you know what, I'm better than this.
Yeah.
Really.
And honestly, the first year or so, maybe it was gravel, maybe it was lugging 2x4s, maybe it was unloading a truck, and you just do what you need to do, and you look back on it a year later and you realize how much you learned when you were doing it, because you're talking to people, you're absorbing things, you're seeing how things are done. So I would say always have the humility just to take whatever opportunity is there, learn, and every opportunity that comes your way, you say yes to as many of them as possible.
Yeah.
And the path that leads you down, it can be a really incredible path.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So www.dexel.
Yes.
You're on Instagram.ca.
Yeah.
Sorry. Dexel.ca.
Yeah.
You're on Instagram.
Yeah.
Paramount's on there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else we're missing?
LinkedIn. We try to stay up to date on LinkedIn and
Yeah.
Instagram. So check us out there. We try to keep up to date.
You guys are
on
CANS
the
member
project.
as well, right?
We are, yeah. I'm definitely. I love the team at CANS. They're incredible,
there.
and I'm involved there with the Government Relations Committee.
Yeah.
My wife is actually the chairman at CANS, so we're
Okay.
as a family.
I knew that. I met your wife. I met you and your wife.
Yeah, so Victoria, she's in construction.
Insurance?
Yes,
Surety? Yeah.
yes, insurance, and they specialize in construction. So we're very much a construction family.
Perfect
and
team.
Talk about the different career paths you can have.
What's the topics at the kitchen table?
Oh, geez,
Gets heated, I bet.
it can. Yeah, look, and we see things different. Of course, being the boots on the ground and out there, and versus the insurer, our perspectives on risk reward and things. There's always some great topics and discussions around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a great example of two extremely different careers in the same industry, and
Yeah. One end of the spectrum to the other is just a great example of what you were just talking about there.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Kris, thanks so much for doing this. Extremely enjoyable. Really appreciate your time. It's been a real pleasure. It's been great chatting with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. And thank you for doing this podcast. I think this is an important thing for Halifax and for the community.
Yeah.
And I love the guitar intro too.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Still plugging away trying to be a musician. Never let the dream die. So.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Atlanta Construction Podcast. Be sure to follow us on any podcast platform you use. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Atlanta Construction Podcast. Be sure to send us a comment or a review. We'd love to engage with you.